Human babies are unbelievably useless. A newborn horse can walk within an hour of birth. Baby giraffes stand up in 30 minutes. Sea turtles hatch entirely alone on a beach and immediately sprint toward the ocean. Meanwhile, a human baby can't even hold its own head up. Leave a newborn alone for a few hours and it dies. It can't walk, talk, feed itself, or properly regulate its own temperature. For the first few months, it barely even realizes it exists separately from its mother. From an evolutionary perspective, this looks like a terrible design. Yet humans became the most dominant species on Earth. We built cities, airplanes, nuclear weapons, and machines that land us on other planets. But somehow, the first stage of our life cycle is closer to a helpless potato than a functioning animal. So, what happened? Why are human babies so absurdly weak compared to almost every other creature on Earth? The answer starts with a problem so catastrophic that evolution basically had to deploy a biological hack just to keep our species alive. And that problem is our brain. Human brains are enormous. An adult brain weighs about 3 pounds and consumes roughly 20% of the body's energy, despite being a tiny fraction of our total weight. Compared to other primates, our brains are ridiculously oversized. Yet that's exactly what allowed us to develop language, planning, tools, culture, and eventually, civilization itself. But evolution hit a massive snag the moment our brains grew. Because babies have to come out somehow. For millions of years, early human ancestors walked on 4 legs. Their hips were shaped like other apes. Birth wasn't exactly easy, but it was manageable. Then, around 6 to 7 million years ago, our ancestors stood up. Walking on 2 legs completely reshaped the human pelvis. Pelvis built for efficient, upright walking is narrow and bowl-shaped. That's fantastic for balance and movement, but terrible for pushing out a baby with a massive skull. Anthropologists call this the obstetric dilemma. Humans evolved 2 traits that directly fight each other: bigger brains and narrower hips. Eventually, evolution hit a wall. A baby's head was becoming too large to safely fit through the birth canal. So at some point, human babies basically started getting evicted early. Compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, human babies are born extremely premature, not in the medical sense, but developmentally. A foal is born ready to run because it spent more time baking inside the mother. A baby chimpanzee is far more physically capable than a human newborn. Human babies, on the other hand, arrive while their brains are still wildly unfinished. If human babies stayed in the womb until their brains could function independently, pregnancy wouldn't be 9 months. It would last roughly 18 to 21 months. And at that point, the baby's head absolutely wouldn't fit through the mother's pelvis. So, evolution settled on a compromise. Get the baby out earlier. Finish construction later. It sounds insane, but it worked. Human babies are basically external fetuses. For the first year of life, massive chunks of brain development happen outside the womb. That's why newborns sleep so much. Their brains are growing at a breakneck speed, roughly doubling in size during the first year. But unlike many animals, human babies aren't born with a finished operating system. They're born adaptable. And this is where things get fascinating. A baby deer is born knowing how to stand. A spider knows how to spin a web without attending spider school. A bird doesn't need flying lessons from a physics textbook. Most animal behavior is pre-programmed hardware. Humans took a completely different route. Instead of hard-coding everything into rigid instinct, evolution made us flexible, painfully flexible. A human baby's brain is incredibly unfinished because it's waiting to download information from its environment. Language, culture, social norms, tools, survival strategies, all of this gets loaded in after birth. In a way, humans traded instinct for learning, and learning requires time. Lots of it. This is why human childhood is bizarrely long compared to most animals. We stay dependent for years. In many hunter-gatherer societies, children don't become fully self-sufficient until their late teens. From a pure survival standpoint, feeding a creature for over a decade before it becomes useful sounds horribly inefficient. But humans aren't built for survival alone. We are built for adaptation. And adaptation turned out to be unbelievably powerful. A wolf born in Siberia and a wolf born in Spain behave mostly the same, but a human can grow up in a desert, a jungle, a frozen tundra, a megacity, or a Pacific island and learn completely different ways of living. That radical flexibility comes directly from the unfinished brain of a helpless child. But being born entirely helpless created another massive problem. Who protects the baby? Most animals solve this simply. The mother handles it alone for a bit, and then the offspring gets on with its life. Human babies made that strategy impossible because they demand constant care. And I mean constant. They cry more than most primates, wake up repeatedly at night, and have to be carried because they can't cling to fur like baby monkeys. They require non-stop feeding. Basically, human babies are utterly exhausting. And strangely enough, that exhaustion may have shaped human society itself. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer groups noticed something unusual. Humans raise children cooperatively. Grandparents, older siblings, fathers, aunts, uncles, and even it's called cooperative breeding. A human baby is so difficult to keep alive that our species turned childcare into a team sport. Some researchers think this permanently rewired human psychology. We became highly social, empathetic creatures partly because isolated parents would struggle to keep a helpless child alive on their own. Your giant social brain exists in part because babies were such a ridiculous burden. Then there's another weird thing about babies. They're cute. This sounds less scientific, but it's actually vital to our survival. In the 1940s, ethologist Konrad Lorenz proposed something called the baby schema. Human babies have oversized eyes, round cheeks, tiny noses, and large foreheads. These specific proportions are basically a biological hack that triggers aggressive nurturing instincts in adult brains. Even people who don't particularly care for children often react emotionally to baby faces. Evolution essentially weaponized cuteness, because if human babies look like hairless, grumpy goblins with adult proportions, some exhausted parents might have simply walked away. And honestly, even with the cuteness upgrade, raising them is still hard enough that we constantly complain about it. But here's the strangest part of all. The helplessness of human babies may be the exact reason we became intelligent in the first place. For a long time, scientists assumed intelligence caused long childhoods. Now researchers think it works the other way around. Long childhoods create intelligence. When a brain spends years learning instead of relying entirely on instinct, it becomes capable of far more complex behavior. Human children play for years, and that play isn't useless, it's running simulations. Children master language, social rules, cooperation, deception, creativity, and problem-solving through endless. Our kids basically spend a decade running physics engines and social simulators inside their own heads. Other animals do this too. But humans pushed it to the absolute extreme. And it all traces back to one dangerous evolutionary compromise made millions of years ago. Our brains got too big, our hips got too narrow, and evolution responded by turning humans into the most unfinished animals on Earth. Every human civilization, every scientific discovery, every empire, every masterpiece, and every spaceship, all of it came from a species whose babies can't even survive the night alone. Which is honestly kind of absurd when you think about it. The dominant species on this planet begins life completely helpless, not because evolution failed, but because this helplessness gave us something far more valuable than early independence. Time. Time to learn, time to adapt, time to become something no other animal ever did.